Have you ever bought a beautiful, rare plant online, only to watch it grow into a common backyard weed? Or maybe you spent your hard-earned money on a green plastic garden tunnel, only to find it shredded to pieces after the very first rainstorm. Welcome to the dark side of the gardening industry. Today, we are exposing the massive scams that target everyday gardeners just like you. But do not worry, we are not just here to complain. I am going to show you exactly how to build the ultimate garden setup. We will talk about the recommended greenhouse materials, the undeniable power of raised beds, the only tools you actually need, the truth about fertilizers, and why a compact tractor might be your best investment. Here is the hook. Everything you have been told about saving money in the garden is probably costing you thousands of dollars in the long run. By the end of this video, you will know the secret to building a garden that lasts a lifetime. So, tell me in the comments right now, what is the worst gardening product you have ever wasted money on? Let us get started. Gardening has exploded in popularity over the last few years. Millions of people decided they wanted to grow their own fresh tomatoes, crisp cucumbers, and beautiful flowers. And wherever there is a sudden boom in interest, there are companies waiting to make a quick buck. Suddenly, the internet was flooded with advertisements for incredibly cheap growing equipment and magical exotic seeds. Historically, building a proper growing environment was a serious craft. Farmers built solid glass houses and forged heavy iron tools that were passed down through generations. Today, the market is flooded with mass-produced disposable garbage disguised as beginner-friendly gear. The fast fashion trend has infected the gardening world. We have lost touch with what it actually takes to cultivate the land effectively. So, let us strip away the marketing lies and look at the cold, hard facts about what works, what fails, and how you can protect your wallet. Let us start with the most common trap for beginners, the incredibly cheap plastic polytunnel. You have probably seen the ads everywhere online. They show a lush, magical jungle growing inside a thin green tent. The price tag is usually under $100. It feels like a total steal. But let me paint a picture of reality for you. You spend hours pushing flimsy metal tubes together. They feel like they are made of recycled soda cans. You stretch the thin plastic over the frame and stake it into the dirt. It looks okay for about a week. Then, a mild thunderstorm rolls through your town. The wind catches that plastic cover like a hot air balloon. The tiny metal stakes rip right out of the wet earth. In the morning, your brand new tunnel is a twisted pile of metal in your neighbor's yard, and your delicate tomato plants are completely crushed. The myth that these cheap tunnels are a good starting point is a complete lie. They have zero structural integrity. You are essentially buying an oversized kite that is destined to destroy your harvest. Do not fall for the illusion of cheap convenience. But what if you live in an area with zero wind? Well, the cheap tunnel still has a fatal flaw. We need to talk about ultraviolet degradation. That thin plastic cover is not designed to withstand the actual power of the sun. Even if your tunnel survives the spring breezes, the summer sun will cook the material. Within 3 to 4 months, the plastic begins to turn cloudy and yellow. Then it becomes incredibly brittle. If you touch it, it cracks like a dry autumn leaf. Before the growing season is even over, your tunnel will start shedding millions of tiny plastic flakes right into your garden soil. You are basically paying money to pollute your own vegetable beds with microplastics. Think about that for a second. You want to grow organic, healthy food, but you are covering it with cheap chemicals that break down over your food. If you buy a cheap tunnel, you will have to buy a replacement cover every single year. When you add up the cost over 5 years, you have spent enough money to buy something permanent. It is a classic false economy. Now, let us move from equipment scams to biological scams. I am talking about the online plant and seed fraud industry. If you have ever scrolled through social media, you have seen the pictures. Bright blue strawberries, rainbow-colored roses, or giant square watermelons. They look like something out of a fantasy movie. The sellers promise that for just $5, you can grow these magical plants in your own living room. Here is the painful truth. Blue strawberries do not exist in nature. Those photos are heavily edited using computer software. When you order those seeds, you wait 6 weeks for a tiny package to arrive from overseas. You plant them carefully, water them daily, and wait. Weeks later, what sprouts up? Common grass, or clover, or worse, an invasive weed that takes over your garden. The scam relies on the fact that by the time you realize you have been cheated, months have passed. The seller has already closed their online shop and opened a new one under a different name. Never buy exotic seeds from unknown social media advertisements. The plant scam goes beyond just fake seeds. It also happens when you try to buy live plants online at a heavy discount. You find a website offering rare, expensive indoor plants for a fraction of the normal price. The photos show large, healthy leaves, but when the cardboard box finally arrives on your porch, you open it to find absolute misery. You pull out a tiny, sad twig wrapped in wet paper towels. The leaves are yellow and falling off, but the real horror is under the dirt. The sellers often cut the roots completely off to save on shipping weight, or they send you a fresh cutting that has not even developed a root system yet. They just stick a branch in some dirt and mail it to you. When you try to save it, the plant rots and dies within a week. You try to contact customer service, but they blame you for overwatering it. The lesson here is simple. If a deal on a rare plant seems too good to be true, it is always a scam. Always buy your live plants from reputable local nurseries, where you can physically inspect the root health before handing over your cash. So if cheap tunnels are garbage, what is the actual solution? The answer is a proper, recommended greenhouse made from high-quality materials. Specifically, twin-wall polycarbonate panels over a heavy-duty aluminum or galvanized steel frame. This is where the game completely changes. Imagine stepping into a structure that actually feels like a building, not a camping tent. Polycarbonate is virtually unbreakable. You could throw a baseball at it, and it would bounce right off. More importantly, those twin walls trap a layer of air inside them. This acts as incredible insulation. During a cold spring night, a cheap plastic tunnel will freeze your plants. But a polycarbonate greenhouse holds on to the heat from the day, keeping your seedlings safe and warm. Yes, the initial investment is higher. It might cost you $1,000 instead of $100, but a good greenhouse will last for 20 years or more. It is a permanent asset to your property that extends your growing season by months. This is how the professionals grow, and it is the only way to guarantee a safe harvest. Just buying a good greenhouse is not enough. You have to understand how to manage it. And this brings us to a massive myth about enclosed growing. Many beginners think a greenhouse is supposed to be completely sealed up to keep it hot. This is a deadly mistake. Plants breathe, and they need fresh air. Without proper airflow, your beautiful new greenhouse turns into a humid, stagnant swamp. Fungal diseases will spread like wildfire, and your plants will literally bake to death on a sunny afternoon. The secret to a successful greenhouse is aggressive ventilation. You need roof vents and side louvers. And here is a pro tip that will change your life. Invest in automatic vent openers. These are simple, brilliant devices that do not require electricity. They contain a special wax cylinder. When the greenhouse gets too hot, the wax expands and pushes the window open. When it cools down at night, the wax shrinks and heavy springs pull the window closed. You never have to worry about rushing home from work to open the windows. Your greenhouse regulates its own temperature automatically. There is one more crucial step to setting up a real greenhouse, and skipping it will ruin everything. I'm talking about the foundation. You cannot just build a heavy glass or polycarbonate structure directly on soft lawn dirt. Over the winter, the ground freezes and thaws. It swells and sinks. If your greenhouse is sitting on raw dirt, the frame will slowly twist out of shape. The doors will stop closing properly. Eventually, the panels will pop right out of the frame. You must build a solid base. At the very least, you need a perimeter of heavy treated timber, perfectly leveled and anchored deep into the ground with rebar. Even better is a poured concrete footing or a perimeter of cinder blocks. Let me give you an example. A friend of mine built a beautiful $2,000 greenhouse but put it right on the grass. 2 years later, the entire structure was leaning so badly, the door shattered. Take the extra weekend to build a proper foundation. It is the boring work that nobody wants to do, but it is the absolute secret to making your greenhouse last a lifetime. Now that we have protected the plants from the weather, let us talk about where they actually grow. It is time to discuss the magic of raised garden beds. The traditional way of gardening is tilling up the flat ground in your yard, but unless you have perfect, dark, loamy soil, planting directly in the ground is an uphill battle. You have to fight heavy clay, rocks, and an endless army of aggressive weeds. Raised beds solve almost all of these problems instantly. By lifting the growing area above the natural ground level, you take total control of the environment. You control exactly what kind of soil goes into the box. The soil in a raised bed never gets stepped on, which means it stays loose, fluffy, and full of oxygen. Plant roots can plunge deep without fighting hard clay. Furthermore, the soil in a raised bed warms up much faster in the spring than the ground soil. This means you can plant your seeds weeks earlier than your neighbors. Raised beds are not just a design aesthetic. They are a massive functional upgrade that drastically reduces the amount of physical labor required to grow food. When it comes to building raised beds, the material you choose is critical, and there is a lot of bad advice out there. Many people buy cheap, untreated pine wood to build their boxes. It looks great on day one, but wet soil is highly corrosive. Within 2 years, that cheap pine will rot away completely, and your beautiful garden bed will collapse into a mud puddle. You need materials that can withstand constant moisture. Thick cedar wood is naturally rot-resistant and looks beautiful, but it can be very expensive. A modern, highly recommended alternative is corrugated galvanized metal. Metal beds have become extremely popular because they last for decades, they will not warp, and they will not rot. There is a common myth that metal beds will cook your plant roots in the summer heat. That is simply not true. The damp soil inside the bed regulates the temperature perfectly. If you want a garden that you only have to build once, invest in high-quality metal raised beds or thick, rough-sawn cedar. Avoid thin, cheap wood at all costs. So, you have built your beautiful raised beds. Now you face a new problem: filling them. Buying premium bagged soil to fill a large raised bed can cost hundreds of dollars. It is incredibly expensive. But there is a brilliant, centuries-old secret to filling your beds for almost free. It is called the hugelkultur method. This is a German word that translates to hill culture, and it is a game changer. Instead of filling the entire box with expensive soil, you start by putting large, rotting logs and thick branches at the very bottom of the bed. Next, you add a layer of smaller sticks, dry autumn leaves, and grass clippings. You only use the good, expensive soil for the top 10 or 12 inches. Why do this? As those logs and branches slowly break down over the years, they act like a giant sponge at the bottom of your garden bed. They soak up rainwater and hold on to it. During a hot summer drought, those rotting logs will slowly release moisture back up to your plant roots. It saves you money on soil, it reduces the amount of watering you have to do, and it feeds your plants naturally for years. Let us shift our focus to the tools of the trade. If you walk into any big-box home improvement store, you will see walls covered in shiny, brightly colored hand tools. They are cheap and they look great. But this is another massive trap. Those tools are usually made with cheap plastic handles and stamped sheet metal heads. The very first time you hit a stubborn rock or try to pry up a thick weed, the handle will snap right off, or the metal will bend backwards. It is incredibly frustrating. The myth is that a trowel is just a trowel. The truth is, cheap tools make gardening miserable and physically painful. You end up buying a new shovel every single spring. Instead, you need to seek out professional-grade tools. Look for tools that are forged from a single piece of high-carbon steel. There should be no weak joints where the handle meets the blade. Yes, a forged steel trowel might cost $30 instead of $5. But it will dig through hard clay like a hot knife through butter, and it will literally outlast you. Stop buying disposable plastic tools. You really only need a few essential tools to run a highly successful garden. The industry wants you to buy 50 different specialized gadgets. You do not need a special avocado slicer-style tool for the garden. The recommended starter pack is just 3 things. First, a high-quality bypass pruner. You need sharp, clean cuts when trimming plants so they do not catch diseases. Second, a solid forged trowel for digging small holes and planting seedlings. And third, a heavy-duty digging fork. Not a shovel, a fork. A digging fork is the ultimate tool for loosening heavy soil, digging up potatoes, and turning your compost pile. A shovel simply pushes dirt around, but a fork shatters clods and aerates the ground without destroying the soil structure. If you have those 3 high-quality items, you can accomplish 95% of all garden tasks. Keep them clean, sharpen the blades once a year, and rub the metal with a little bit of linseed oil before winter. Keep your tool shed simple, organized, and filled only with things that actually work. Another crucial aspect of tool use that nobody talks about is ergonomics. Gardening is hard physical work. If you are using the wrong tools, you will destroy your back and your knees in a single weekend. Most cheap rakes and hoes have handles that are way too short. They force you to bend over constantly while you work. This puts massive strain on your lower spine. A secret to effortless gardening is buying tools with extra long handles. When you use a hoe, you should be standing completely straight up, with your back straight, just moving your arms. If you are hunched over, the tool is too small for you. Another fantastic upgrade is the oscillating stirrup hoe. Unlike a traditional hoe where you have to chop at the ground, a stirrup hoe slides back and forth just under the surface of the soil. It cuts the weeds off at the root with almost zero effort. Upgrading to ergonomic, long-handled tools will transform gardening from a painful chore into a relaxing, enjoyable activity. Your body will thank you, and you will get much more work done. Now we must address the most confusing part of gardening: fertilizers. The shelves are packed with bright blue liquids and fancy powders, promising miracle growth overnight. The fertilizer industry is huge, and a lot of it is snake oil. Let us bust a major myth right now. Pouring synthetic chemical fertilizers on your plants is like feeding a human being nothing but energy drinks and vitamin pills. Yes, you will get a sudden burst of crazy growth. The plant will look huge and green, but you are completely ignoring the actual health of the soil. Chemical fertilizers often contain high levels of salts. Over time, these salts build up in your raised beds and kill all the beneficial earthworms and microscopic bacteria that your garden needs to survive. You end up with dead, sterile dirt that requires more and more chemical fertilizer just to grow anything. It creates an endless cycle of dependency on expensive chemical products. This is exactly what the big companies want you to do, but it is not how nature actually works. The true secret to an explosive, healthy garden is organic matter. You need to feed the soil, not just the plant. The most highly recommended fertilizer is completely free. It is compost. When you take your kitchen scraps, coffee grounds, and dead leaves and let them break down, you are creating black gold. Compost does not just provide nutrients, it physically improves the structure of the soil. It makes clay drain better, and it helps sandy soil hold moisture. If you want to give your plants a massive boost, try making compost tea. You take a big handful of rich compost, put it in a mesh bag, and steep it in a bucket of water for a few days, just like making tea. What you get is a dark, nutrient-rich liquid packed with billions of beneficial microbes. When you pour this on your plants, it creates a living ecosystem around the roots. The roots become stronger, the plants resist diseases naturally, and your vegetables will actually taste significantly better. Throw away the synthetic blue crystals and start embracing the power of natural compost. However, if you do need to buy bagged organic fertilizer, you must know how to read the secret code on the bag. Every fertilizer has 3 numbers on the front, like 555 or 1042. This is the NPK ratio: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Understanding this will save you from destroying your crops. Nitrogen, the first number, pushes green leafy growth. It is great for lettuce and spinach. But here is the trap. If you give a tomato plant a fertilizer with massively high nitrogen, the plant will grow 10 feet tall, have beautiful, huge green leaves, but it will not produce a single tomato. Phosphorus, the second number, is what triggers flowers and fruit. Potassium, the third number, builds strong roots and overall health. So, if you want massive tomatoes or peppers, you need a fertilizer where the middle number is higher than the first number. So many beginners buy a high nitrogen lawn fertilizer and put it on their vegetables, totally ruining their harvest. Always read the NPK ratio to match what your specific plants actually need. Let us scale things up. What happens when your garden grows beyond a few raised beds? Maybe you have bought a few acres and want to start a serious homestead or a micro farm. Doing everything by hand will eventually break your spirit. This is where the compact garden tractor comes in. Now, I am not talking about a cheap riding lawnmower. I am talking about a sub-compact tractor with a real power takeoff shaft and a 3-point hitch. A lot of people think buying a tractor is a luxury, but when you are moving yards of compost, dragging heavy logs, or turning over a 1/4 acre of soil, a tractor becomes your most important employee. It turns a job that would take 4 men a full weekend into a 1-hour task that you can do while drinking your morning coffee. The myth that tractors are only for massive commercial farms is outdated. Modern compact tractors are designed exactly for the ambitious homeowner. They are small enough to fit through standard gates, but powerful enough to do serious earth-moving. The true power of a garden tractor is not the machine itself, but the attachments. Buying a tractor without the right implements is like buying a power drill with no drill bits. The most highly recommended attachment is the front-end loader. A loader bucket changes everything. You can scoop up 1,000 pounds of soil and dump it directly into your new raised beds in minutes. No more pushing a heavy wheelbarrow through the mud until your arms give out. Another incredible attachment is the rotary tiller. Instead of wrestling a tiny, bouncing walk-behind tiller that beats you to death, you attach a heavy tiller to the back of the tractor. You simply drive forward at a slow crawl, and the tractor effortlessly grinds the toughest earth into a perfect, fluffy seedbed. You can also get augers for planting fruit trees, or pallet forks for moving heavy supplies. A good compact tractor is a multi-tool that handles the heaviest, most dangerous work on your property safely and efficiently. Of course, a tractor is a serious investment. It is an engine, and it requires respect and maintenance. The biggest mistake new tractor owners make is neglecting basic service. They leave the machine out in the rain and ignore the greasing schedule. A tractor has dozens of metal joints under massive pressure. If you do not pump grease into those fittings regularly, the metal will grind away, resulting in catastrophic failure and a repair bill in the thousands. You must also check the hydraulic fluid and change the oil exactly when the manual tells you to. But if you take care of a quality compact tractor, it will easily last for 30 to 40 years. It will hold its resale value incredibly well. When you combine the heavy lifting power of a tractor, the controlled environment of raised beds, and the extended season of a polycarbonate greenhouse, you create an unstoppable system. You move from being someone who struggles to grow a few tomatoes to someone who can feed their entire family effortlessly. Ultimately, the message here is about the true cost of cheap gardening. The industry wants you to stay on a hamster wheel of buying cheap plastic tunnels that break, fake seeds that do not grow, flimsy tools that snap, and synthetic fertilizers that ruin your soil. They want you failing and repurchasing every single year. But now you know the truth. Yes, building a solid foundation costs more up front. A real greenhouse, thick metal raised beds, forged steel tools, and perhaps a small tractor represent a serious commitment. But this is an investment in your property, your health, and your food security. When you build it right the first time, gardening transforms into a peaceful, rewarding lifestyle. You step outside, your tools work perfectly. Your greenhouse is warm, your soil is rich, and your plants thrive. You stop fighting nature and start working alongside it. Do not let the cheap marketing scams steal your joy of growing. And there you have it, the ultimate truth about the gardening industry. The most surprising takeaway is that trying to save a few dollars on a cheap plastic tunnel or fake seeds online will actually cost you a fortune in lost time, ruined crops, and sheer frustration. We have covered the undeniable benefits of a solid polycarbonate greenhouse, the magic of hugelkultur in metal-raised beds, the necessity of forged steel tools, the power of organic compost, and the game-changing leverage of a compact garden tractor. By investing in quality up front, you build a system that practically runs itself and lasts a lifetime. Now it is time to take action and upgrade your backyard setup. Thank you so much for watching. If this video helped you avoid a massive gardening mistake, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like. Now, I have a question for you. Are you team raised beds or team traditional ground planting? Drop into the comments below and let us debate the best way to grow. See you in the next video.